From the twisted realm of science and the darkest pits of reason comes chilling tales of godlessness. Bear witness to the unfathomable terror that is the Good Atheist.
Visiting old friends in Ottawa, let me tell you what, wandering around a city with terrible public transportation in the cold is a nightmare.
Yeah, you know what? I just don't. I don't go to Ottawa because the place I find just generally uninteresting. Like, there's nothing that goes on over there. That is basically my impression of it. I mean, other than diplomatic dinners.
Oh yeah,
what have you?
I'm not trying to pretend like Ottawa is a hot spot or anything. I've just got some friends back there, and I go back, get rowdy, kill a few brain cells, and come back here and try to hold my own against you.
Now, for those of you that are fans but they're not Canadian or do not know, sort of like the capitals of countries, Ottawa is the capital of Canada. Mm-hmm. So, as you can guess, it's a very conservative place, the kind of place where, diplomats usually get to drive over people and not get convicted or ever get a parking ticket. One of those annoying cities where people get away with anything just because they got that special plate.
Yep, because they come from an embassy.
I fucking hate those places. I hate them so much. Okay, speaking of things that I hate,
I feel like that's going to be a theme of the show.
It is going to be a theme of the show. It's just like I'm in a pissed off mood today.
Do you need a hug?
No.
I could give you a hug. I give killer hugs.
Girlfriend's coming over, so I'm gonna have plenty of hugs and other kinds of hugs.
I don't know, man. It didn't sound like you wanted to hug her earlier.
Yeah, but you know what? When you're angry at someone, sometimes the hugging is a lot better. Mm. You know what I mean?
Yes, it's true.
A brutal hugging.
Oh,
after a nice fight.
I understand. Because I wasn't offering to hug you. I was just offering to hug you. Just want to clarify that.
Yeah, you did. Sure you did. Okay, so I sent you this article. It's one that we're going to talk about. It's basically an LA Times article that was basically calling us I guess this was written by this woman called Charlotte Allen, excuse me. She wrote a book. What was it called?
It was called The Human Jesus or something.
Yeah,
like
no,
that.
The Historical Quest for Jesus. Basically, she wrote a book, trying to prove that Jesus was a real person, that he existed. And obviously, not just from that fact, but also that, he not only did he exist, but he was also a god. Did you not know? He was also a god. I proved that he existed and was a god. Anyways. This woman basically went on and wrote possibly, I think, one of the stupidest articles that I've ever read on atheism. And I've read a lot of articles from a variety of newspapers, because every single one of them, once in a while, the New York Times, the Washington Post, now the LA Times, they all like to have their guests come over and basically bash fucking atheism and tear them a new a-hole, saying like, oh, atheists are so whiny and boring. That's her claim now, like that we're apparently whiny and boring. Now, I agree. First of all, before we even talk about it, I agree with what P.C. Myers said, that if you say that your subjects that you're writing about are boring, then that's probably not the best way to start an article. Just a thought here. It's like, this is boring. Let me go on to tell you how boring this is. Yeah, how about you don't? How about you mind your own business? But this is actually some of the things that she talked about, which is what I want to talk about with you, discuss, is the fact that she said that not only are we not persecuted as atheists, but there is no... there's no conspiracy to make it so that atheists can't hold public office. There's no problems with you or your job or your family if you quote-unquote come out. We're all making a big deal for no reason. What do you think about that?
Oh, it's obviously completely wrong. I mean, everything really, if you haven't read the article, you really should go back and read it, because it'll, I mean, this is, personally, I'm not in a bad mood, but I am angry because I read that article and I'm just like, wow. This has to be some of the. It's got to be probably one of the worst shellackings atheists I've gotten in a public thing, and to have it come from somebody who just gets everything so completely wrong. Like just to give you an example of one of the first things she says in one of the first paragraphs, she says, "If science can't prove something, it doesn't exist." That's what she says. We think, and I'm like, well, if science disproves something. Then it
does not exist. Yeah, that would be correct. We disprove tons of stuff all the time. Like disproving I don't know, like the ether, or we disprove all kinds of just.
We've talked about it, I think, on the last in the last show. It's just that the only thing that science pretty much hasn't been able to put a definitive stake through the heart of is the God that can change all rules and therefore doesn't apply to
do you
the catch-22 of a all-powerful deity.
He's like, well, he can't be tested. Did you ever read that article I wrote once? It was called "Whose God Are You Debating Anyways?" Basically, what I was saying is that a tactic of religious people is to always go one thing back in terms of how did they describe God in such a way that it is undefinable. So if all of a sudden I disprove to you that the whole idea of a personal God that answers prayer, that's impossible, they'll just jump back and say, well, God exists outside of time, and he was the creator of everything, and he didn't need to create himself because he's God. And all of a sudden, you're just like, well, this is bullshit.
Yeah, I know.
Fucking magic answer.
You can't apply all these rules basically from the Bible, which is the Word of God, and then step back and say, well, that wasn't God. Anyway, it's like
some of them were stories, some of them were not stories. I'm like, whoa, which one's stories, which one's not? Usually it's pretty simple. It's either true or it's not true, and if it's not true, it's just a bunch of stories. You may have heard other religions make similar claims. No one's talking about the truth or the untruth of Zoroastrianism. We kind of moved beyond that, and all the thousands of fucking religions we moved on beyond since then. But you know what? What I find most disturbing about this article is it just doesn't. Not only does it not say anything, but if you would have replaced atheist with blacks, Jews, Mormons, any fucking minority, they would have just lost their minds. They would have called her a bigot. They would have called her racist, intolerant, and really that's what it is. I mean, we're so used to these kinds of statements, we don't even see it as such. But if you feel like a bit of a persecuted minority, and I know that most of the places that listen, most of the people that listen to this podcast probably live in places where they are prosecuted. That's why they like listening to us. We're the crusty curmudgeons that make them feel better about their fucking shitty situation.
Well, that's pretty grim.
It is a little grim. But you know what? Like it's grim in the fact that their situations are crummy. But it's nice to know that we are an entertaining show.
And it's also nice to know that atheists are making headway, because this is basically the feeling that I got, is that you're going to see more and more articles like this, because it's not so much the battle lines are being drawn, although they are.
They are very unsubtly being drawn.
I mean, think about how weird it is that there is this is a really long article. It's a good 2 or 3 pages, and it's an article about how something that atheists claim exists doesn't exist. And how ironic is that?
I know. Well, to be fair, I write article after article about how their shit isn't real. But then again, I don't turn around them and say, disprove the fact that I'm disproving you or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not throwing them in an impossible situation here. They make claims. I call them on their claims, and that's about it. I mean, our only real claim is that the evidence for God is insufficient, and therefore the question is moot. That your personal God does not exist because you've showed no evidence to it. This is what we're saying to all these Christians people, and they turn around, and they have the balls to say it. Well, atheists don't debate in these metaphysical or theological questions. I'm like, theological questions, it's nothing more than a sophisticated form of ignorance. Like, it's all nonsense. How many fucking angels fit on the head of a pin? Who cares? Like, that is not an honest question, and how am I supposed to debate that?
Is that a literal, an actual, one of those gotcha questions?
No, it just used to be questions that theologians were grasping with.
Like
trying to figure out these... Yeah, exactly. The whole, can God create a rock big enough that he can lift it? That he can't lift it. And, you're just left with this whole... Why is this even a debate kind of thing? Normally when you have a debate, if it is indeed a debate, you have to admit at the end that someone's going to be right or someone's going to be wrong. You have to seek the truth. These people aren't interested in the truth. They're interested in only maintaining what they already believe. So they're not debating with you. They're arguing with you about their point of view.
The scary thing about this whole article, at least to me, is that, you read it from obviously our perspective and you see it a certain way, but you read it another way. Like, say you're a religious person that doesn't know all that much about atheism.
Yeah, that's fair to say for most people.
But you read this article and you hear all these quotes from, say, Dawkins and Hitchens and the Feringula guy and all these other people, and basically she picks all the quotes where
we look like dicks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you know what? Truth be told, I mean,
we'll do the same thing.
There are religious dicks and there are atheist dicks, and the truth of the matter is
they're all human dicks.
We will both be dicks trying to disprove each other's points, and that doesn't really mean that we're mean people. It's just that we're having a discussion about it. We're having an argument. argument.
heated discussion. Yeah, and in a heated discussion, I may call someone like Miss Ellen a bitch.
Well, here's the whole thing. This is the crazy thing about her, and this is why I don't actually care all that much about it, is because this chick literally is a crackpot. I looked up, I Googled her, and I read some of her other articles, and they are just as, like, I mean, if you think the atheist one is stupid, and because the only thing she got right at all in the entire article was the fact that atheists look down on agnostics, which is true.
It is generally true. We feel that they're fence sitters and that they're annoying for placating everybody. We're like, pick a side, motherfucker.
And we've had that debate many times over, and I've always been of the opinion that I don't mind if people want to stay out of it.
And I can't blame them for not wanting to take part of the fight, because it's messy, man. It is a messy fight.
Absolutely. But everything else, and check this out. I want to read you a couple of quotes. She wrote an article about Barack Obama and how all women are, you know...
So this was before he became president?
This was, yeah, right. This is, I think, I don't have the date on it. But
you see how it feels to be asked a question you can't answer? It's horrible.
Oh, good job, good job. But here's what she said about all the women fawning over Barack Obama. I'm going to quote, it's a bit long, so sit with me here.
I will.
I can't help it, but reading about such episodes of screaming, gushing, and swooning makes me wonder whether women, or I should say we women, of course, aren't the weaker sex after all, or even the stupid sex, our brains permanently occluded by random emotions, psychosomatic flailings, and distracted by the superficial. Women are only children of a larger growth, wrote one 18th century Earl of Chesterfield. Could he have been right? I'm like, wow.
You know what?
Earl of Chesterfield.
I get this funny impression from all these really conservative chicks, and it's all the fact that they hate women. Okay, like, if you are a true conservative, I'll be honest with you, you generally feel that women are uneducated and unable to make proper decisions when it comes to voting and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And the reason they feel that way is because most women are usually vote fairly liberal rather than conservative. So obviously their first thought is, women are stupid.
They disagree, and therefore they are dumb.
Therefore they are dumb.
And, you know, that's the perfect summary of this person's article.
Yeah, exactly. They disagree with me, therefore they have to be stupid. But you know what? I find if you are a woman, you're a conservative, there's a problem there. And the problem is basically that conservatives would love nothing more than for you to be barefoot and preggers in the house. And you know what? Some of you may actually kind of dig that. Maybe you look at that with some form of nostalgia, and that's fine. But you can't force that lifestyle on other people. Like, they don't want to live. Most women don't want to live the way that conservatives would have them live, because they're human beings. They are entitled to live their lives if they see fit, and it's their choice.
It's always kind of weirded me out how right wing stuff usually is about control. You know, it's like, you can't have abortions, you can't get married, you can't put your penis in somebody's anus, you can't do all these fun things.
I just think that in general we are. A lot of men, conservative men specifically, are very afraid of women, because women control probably one of the most important things that all men seek, and that is sex. They control sex. And, a lot of times, even in our society, I think women like to victimize themselves and say, well,
it's terrible being sexy.
It's terrible being a
it's
woman. That kind of stuff. No one takes
men
me. Yeah.
wanting to have sex with me.
But really, from a young age, women really start understanding how they can use sex to their advantage. I mean, like, how many women have you met that were kind of like happy that their looks got them a special on electronic equipment at a future shop, or that it helped them sort of like dressing sexily made them appear more professional and got them a raise, even though they're like, well, other people that weren't as hot didn't get a raise. Even on with their personal lives. Like, I know many women who have used sex as a form of punishment to their spouses or significant others. Like, let's not kid ourselves here. Sex, when you have full control over it, it is indeed dangerous and tempting. That's why all these guys are like, you have no power. Wear this fucking veil on your head. You have sex when I tell you to have sex, and that is it. You know?
And you only have sex with the person that I choose that you will have sex with.
Or, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I understand where that kind of primitive need comes from, at least on the part of men, is saying, we need to keep our women under control, but I'm like, I got news for you. These are not possessions. They're not things you can possess. That they control the means of reproduction is too bad. You know, if you don't want to be part of that, then go become gay. Then you won't need to ever worry about women controlling you for sex. You can have whenever you want. Otherwise, you just have to accept that they're going to have that extra bit of power. Now, with that said, we still run the world. There's no problem here. Most of the world is being run by men, so it's cool. I say give them power.
It's one of the few tools. We have the ability. We've got the physical ability to dominate them. I'm pretty sure on a trade-off, they would probably choose that over the sex appeal.
Yeah, because you know what? There are though they do exist, there are fewer battered men than battered women.
You know
in
what?
this world.
Actually, you'd be obviously. I'm not.
I know. I'm sure I'd be surprised as to which men get battered. Obviously, I didn't say that they did not exist. I'm just saying that if you look at the numbers, it's probably a ratio of 20 abused women to every one man, that.
Absolutely.
If that. But look, there's still other forms of abuse, psychological or whatever.
It's becoming a bigger problem in North America where women are just wailing on men all the time.
I tell you, it's becoming a problem when so many of them are like 350 pounds and can fucking just sit on your face and just kill you. So yeah, they're becoming like, some of these women, particularly in the South, have become just so large that they're an unstoppable force, like Juggernaut. From the X-Men.
Lordy.
Okay, let's move on to the next subject, actually. I wanted to get off that biatch and her crazy stuff. I wanted to actually talk to you about a religion. It's not even an official religion. It's called, I'll see if I can pronounce it properly, Neeman Han. Or Neeman Ha. I don't know. Do you think that's how it's pronounced? Like, who really cares?
It's Nemina.
Nemina?
Nemina is how I kind of read it.
Okay, actually, I like better your dictation. Anyways. And that's kind of like a New Age religion that's essentially one of those, it's like a fake Native American religion. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because there's a woman by the name of Daniel Hauser who recently lost in court for her right to deny cancer treatment to her boy that's suffering from a form of Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yeah.
And Hodgkin's lymphoma, like I believe the survival rates for the type that he has is about 90%. When chemotherapy and radiation treatment is used. But they did not want to use it because they preferred using the sort of like more holistic
Indian medicines.
Oh, yeah. Like colonics and that kind of fucking bullshit. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so they lost. They went to court and they lost. And the court was like, you have till a specific amount of date to go to an oncologist and to basically get the kid tested and put on a treatment, and that is it. Otherwise, your kid's going to be removed from your personal custody. And they wanted to go. They got back and they came back saying like, oh, this is just government going on and telling people how to live their lives and so on and so forth. First, what are your thoughts on this kind of particular thing? Like these types of incidents. We've talked about them before, but in this situation, I want to talk about it specifically because of also the type of religion that what you call it? Niemanon?
Here's the whole deal: is that the Hausers are Catholic. Yet they also support this Nimina thing, which is like a holistic Indian medicine thing, run by a guy who's already spent several months in jail for fraud.
Well, why is anyone surprised? I mean, like, if you are ever convicted of fraud, you need to consider becoming a preacher when you get out, because you can make money and never go back to jail ever again. It's the sweetest scam.
Because the whole thing, as far as I could tell from reading up on this, is that it's kind of like that weird, you'll have religious people who are really into God, but at the same time, they'll believe in The Secret. And I'm like, what?
I know, because The Secret is like pretty much the witchcraft that, your own very Bible warns you against.
It's like people who are uber religious yet still love horoscopes, still do this, and these are the same people who, who are hell-bent on having their religious whatevers enforced on everybody else, but they still have, it's a general, these are superstitious people and they enjoy all these different kind of weird things, and it blows my mind that
you know what blows my mind? It blows my mind that anyone would actually listen to this for more than 15 seconds and think that this is an issue of a sort of like religious tolerance. It has nothing to do with that. And I'm really sick and tired of all these people who have like really backwards ass idea about medical science that will deny their own children healthcare. Like at the same time that this was going on, one mother was facing charges. We wrote about that before for not calling 911 when her daughter had a diabetic attack. Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out that during the court proceedings, the woman fainted, and they called 911. They called 911 for her because that's what everybody does. We all recognize when a person is sick or needs medical treatment, you leave them over to the hands of professionals. There is an entire field of science, medical science, that takes care of our health. Now, if you think that that it violates your religious beliefs to treat yourself medically. If you're an adult, you have that fucking luxury. But when you have children, you are their custodians. It is your job to ensure their security and their continued existence. If you fail at that, you go to jail.
Well, the argument that they were trying to use in court is because the kid is 13 years old and he's old enough to understand this and that. But the funny thing, well, it's not a funny thing, but the interesting thing about it is the kid has a learning disability and he can't even read. I'm like, you know what? Not gonna criticize him or make assumptions about maybe the parents or this and that. I'm just saying, if the kid can't read, then do you think he has the capability of understanding,
the kind of difficult choice he's about to make?
The fact that he's about to kill himself effectively?
No, obviously he doesn't have that idea. And even if he did, he probably has a very ridiculous concept saying like, well, I'll just die and go to heaven and then I'm going to meet all my family and friends there, so it's no big deal, right? I'm like, look, kid, you only got one life. Take the fucking chemotherapy and then you can have plenty of time the rest of your life to what? Quote unquote regret the fact that you're still alive? No, trust me. Life is better than non-life. If you're given the option, everybody would and should pick life, not non-life.
Well, the sad fact about it is it all comes down to a lack of trust in our in basically medical science.
Yeah, it has been eroded in the past.
Well, I mean, it's very
decades,
obvious why it's being eroded, because you've got these gigantic corporations that are only interested in the bottom line, pumping everybody full of drugs.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's like, why do people not trust the medical community? Because number one, there are so many cases where you hear these horror stories of overworked doctors killing people.
Well, I think I remember, at least in Canada, is that most doctors work so many hours that functionally they are drunk.
Yeah.
They don't drink, but they're so tired that they are essentially as though they were drunk.
Yeah,
so I'm like, that's what you see in all hospitals all over the place.
Yeah, we have a friend we grew up with. He's a surgeon, and the stories that he tells some of our friends about how long he works and it's terrifying. So
yeah, it is pretty terrifying. Like, take these pills so you stop shaking when you're performing your surgery. I'm like, oh yeah, that fills me with confidence.
But even above that, there's always been, I don't know what it is about cancer. I think it might just be because chemotherapy is so generally unpleasant, and the concept behind chemotherapy is basically we're going to radiate you and kill a whole bunch of cells. And obviously people are uncomfortable with that, you know? It's like, if the concept was a little bit less scary, then maybe we wouldn't have all of these people going back to the Indian sweat shack and thinking whacking themselves with herbs is going to fix them.
Look, it's the same, didn't you say this before that we, well, I don't know if you said it overtly, but it was implied. You were like, you were saying that you were worried about messing up your brain, for instance, because you said, well, you can think that you have control over it, but in reality you don't. And I think that kind of encapsulates like our view of our own bodies. We would like to think that we have a really good understanding that using our will alone, that we can kind of like overcome all these things. I'm like, will is just a fucking thing in your head, okay? Mm-hmm. It's just a concept. It doesn't really exist. You can't wish yourself healthier. You can't, like, I'm sure everybody's told you, well, positive thinking will not cure cancer.
Yeah, mind over matter is a lie.
It is pretty much a lie.
Trust me, it is a lie.
Yeah, it's a lie. I mean, I won't say that there are not health benefits to being happy. Of course there are. But is it going to cure you from Hodgkin's lymphoma? No, it will not cure you from those kinds of things. I'll tell you what will. Aggressive treatment, aggressive chemotherapy. When you're 13 years old, again, your chances are good. You're healthy. You're going to bounce back and those kinds of things. You got your whole life ahead of you. And now the courts have decided, well, obviously you cannot. Your parents are unable to handle that because they're making improper decisions. You know what? The court, really, what they've done is they've actually saved the parents. Because if the parents had let this thing go and the kid dies, like, you go to jail, all right? You did not provide the adequate treatment. Like I said, when you have a kid, it is a binding contract. I mean, you are now responsible for a human being, and you're responsible along the ways that society is determined that you need to take care of them. And that's it. You can't just suddenly say, well, I'm not going to be part of these rules. Brr.
It's not like dropping your iPhone in the toilet and then just being, well, that was silly. I got to go buy another one now.
No. The people will be held accountable for missing children or dead children, and this definitely falls in that category.
I just worry that they're not going to do anything, because in the article she was saying that even if the court tries to force me to do this, I'm not going to do it. And I'm personally amazed because we've heard about it before in Canada with the kids, where the government just stepped in and it's like, we're taking these kids and we're doing this. And I'm kind of surprised that they're just like, you got until this date to go and get this dealt with. Because personally, you know what? If you're going to court to fight it, do you really think these people are actually going to go through and do...
Well, I think the court wants to give them the opportunity to do it because they don't want to be stuck in a situation where they come in, look like the bad guy, take the kid away, and then suddenly say, well, you were unfit as a parent. They're like, you have to meet these requirements, and if you're not, you are literally condemning your child to death.
Yeah.
Therefore, we have to sort of like take over, because what else are we going to take over? A coffin, you know, sort of like a dead body in a coffin? No, of course not. And I'm like, I think that's actually kind of fair. That's fair.
I dig it. I just, you know, fingers crossed these parents don't run. You know what I mean?
I don't
Because
know.
when it comes to, like, I've always felt if some court was going to try and take away my kid, I'd be like, well, I'm going to Mexico. See you later.
Well, they'll chase you down to the border, and they probably just shoot your ass full of lead.
True that.
When they do that. The last thing I actually wanted to talk about, I didn't send this link to you, so you unfortunately won't have any research about it.
Oh no!
But actually, we've talked about it before, and it just keeps coming up every once in a while. And I wanted to talk about it very shortly. Mm-hmm. And it was all the child witches in Nigeria. And there's finally a number that's come out. Like, I was trying to look at how many kids in Nigeria are accused of witchcraft. How often does it happen, so on and so forth. Well, it turns out that the numbers are something along the lines of 15,000 children in Nigeria alone have been accused of being witches and are basically living on the streets or begging for money or, you know, or just fucking finding a corner to die. And what really upset me, and this is the part that I talked about, was one of the guys who had started that Stepping Stones charity that helps those kids. I mean, I already said that's a great thing. I pointed people towards it. I said you should donate. There's one thing that he said, though, that kind of upset me. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing I wanted to talk about specifically, is that he said that he didn't feel as though the belief in witches was the problem. He just felt like, he said, obviously you can't stop people from believing what they want to believe, but it's just that when it affects the health of children, they should, you know, obviously not. And that kind of got me into the whole rant, and at least in personal rant of this notion that people are entitled to their beliefs and there's no problem. You can have a belief.
There's nothing wrong with being ignorant.
There's nothing wrong with being ignorant is basically what he's saying. Not just that, but also that as long as you hold a belief privately, it doesn't matter how crazy it is, it's all good. And to that I have to say no. I have to just say at large no. You cannot separate the idea of witchcraft from harming children. Okay, they're gonna interact. And what you believe has a strong impact on, like, what happens in the world around you. I mean, like, if you believe that you were Napoleon, you know, that's going to have a strong effect on your outside world. And no one's going to go over to you and say, well, as long as your beliefs don't harm anybody else, you're totally entitled to them. I'm like, come on. Are we going to stop taking this kind of, like, pathetic position of saying, well, everybody is entitled to their opinion, they're all equal, and everything's all good? I'm like, no, they're not. Not all beliefs are fucking equal. And that's just it.
It feels like a corruption of the idea of individualism, because that's the whole thing. As time goes on, people are like, well, you know what? Everybody as an individual is allowed to, you know, say and think and do generally what they want to do, so long as they're not interfering with other people. And the unfortunate thing is, when you haven't enough people thinking the wrong thing, you have stuff like every single pig in Egypt being slaughtered, or 15,000 kids in Africa. Is it Africa?
Well, Nigeria is in Africa, yes.
They're getting killed.
Yeah. You know what? It's just, for me, I guess it's the notion, look, I wouldn't tell anyone that they're not entitled or that they're not allowed to have those opinions, but entitlement, at least to me, suggests that you deserve to have that opinion. And I'm like, to be honest, most people that have opinions, they've just been told what opinions to have. They've never done any research, any thinking about it. And therefore, it's not even their opinion. It's just the opinion of the town preacher or the, you know, your redneck teacher or whoever else was telling you all the bullshit that's inside of your head.
And beware, because the same thing can happen to atheists as well. I have met some startlingly ignorant atheists.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It is not limited to the religious or the superstitious. It's just anyone at any time is going to have at least a couple things that they believe that are completely wrong. And I mean, I remember myself. I mean, I used to believe in ghosts and the you know, the conspiracy behind the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I mean, believe these things And I was wrong. I was entitled to them, but they were stupid beliefs. They were based on just misinformation. And like a person can go around and say, "Well, you're entitled to them, and it's no problem." But what if I became just some kind of crazy nut as a consequence of me believing in the conspiracy, some conspiracy theory, and then all of a sudden, as a result, I harm other people, or who knows? I sent letter bombs. I mean, there are consequences, like I said before, to belief. And really, we need to stop thinking that, well, what a person believes is really what they believe. No, it's just what they have been told they should believe. And I think that in the cases of this whole witches in Africa, the obvious answer here is to discourage belief in witchcraft. It's to eliminate this superstition. It needs to be gone. No one should believe in that. I mean, it's not just because it is just so stupid. It's also deadly. I mean, people are being killed all the time over this belief.
It just amazes me that considering how far ahead the world has come and everything like that, there are still people out there who live in these situations where they can honestly believe that kind of stuff goes on. Because it should be very clear. We should be able to tell these people, you know what, very clearly there is no such thing as witchcraft. It is completely bull and it does not exist.
Yep. And it's not witches that are destroying your crops or that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just as ridiculous as those penis thieves. Remember, people get killed all the time because some douchebag accuses you of stealing his dick, and people don't even bother to find out. They will kill you. And it's just because these superstitions are powerful and they make you violently stupid.
Well, the funny thing is, we say it's strange that people believe in that, but at the same time, we're arguing the same thing with religious people. It's just another form of that.
It's true. It's just that how those beliefs sort of translate into action is different. If you believe that, say, Jesus was a god and resurrected, so on and so forth, it doesn't necessarily predicate any type of behavior. But if you believe that individuals are witches and curse you, and you have limited access to, foods and that kind of stuff, your livelihood is largely dependent on, controlling as many of the outside factors you possibly can. For you, your superstition has direct consequences.
Well, think about this. Think of all of the, the Christian-based religions that focus completely on revelations.
Oh, yeah.
And how many times that has ended up in violent confrontation. Not always their fault, mind you.
No, not always. I mean, Waco comes to mind, but these kinds of things, they usually end up being, resolving themselves quite violently, just basically because people have these ingrained superstitious beliefs and their opinions their minds can't be changed. If as soon as you say, well, I refuse to change my mind about this issue, then that's a problem. I still accept the fact that if I'm given enough evidence, in terms of the proof of God, I'll believe it, because I can't stand the idea of refusing to believe something if the evidence points in that direction. If any one of you out there who believes it, if you're religious and you refuse to ever let go of the idea of God, because most of you, you probably would out of just fear that immediately not believing would suddenly make you go to hell, then there's obviously something wrong with your belief system.
It's the whole idea of you're being tested.
Oh, right? Yeah, that's
right.
So,
and
fossils are tests,
and you gotta survive these tests or you go to hell. I'm I can understand God keeping his mouth shut and staying in the background, but testing and everything, come on.
Yeah, testing is just cruel, isn't it?
I purposefully made everything point in the wrong direction.
But you know what's funny? They'll go and blame Satan. You're like, but God is more powerful than Satan. Can't he not stop Satan from creating all these tests? Obviously not. Look, a test is just cruel in my mind. It's like you ever have someone who tested you, say you got a girlfriend, right? So it's testing you over saying, I was just going to test if you love me. You would lose your mind. You'd be like, get out of my house. You are not testing me. It's like, testing. It's like, when I told you I loved you, you should have believed me. None of this testing BS.
Yeah. None of that, I have herpes. Will you stay with me? That was just a test.
Oh my God, that's the worst test in the world. Who does that? Thankfully, I don't know anyone who would do something so foolish and so stupid. But yeah, that would be pretty scary if somebody did that to you, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
wouldn't it? All right, with that, let's wrap up the show, and we'll catch everybody Friday for the regular non-paid show. Again, we'd like to thank all of you patrons for contributing.
Keeping the dream alive.
Keeping the dream alive, people. And remember to tell other people about it. I mean, hey. We're the bitter, sarcastic atheist podcast. So if you know anybody that likes bitterness and sarcasm, point them our way.